Welcome to our lovely future humans, to our 5D collective. To those who are new, we began our day with a couple of shorts and a bit of chit chat, and in a series of 9 minutes, give or take, I began talking to you all about how, God, it's not like He picks the weak ones. And what I was trying to say is those who don't know how to forgive and love are weak. We are all weak, but weakness with our hands means we're not all stronger than the bear, right? But weakness with heart means that you are a person who doesn't know how to forgive. And so God, while the people who are choosing to continue with good and bad in a way of medieval times continue to think that there's a good side and a bad side, what I can tell you is when you read things like take me as I am, a phrase that expresses a desire to be accepted by God despite one's faults. The prayer also includes a phrase, summon out what I shall be and set your seal upon my heart. The prayer expresses that God has gifted people with the potential for good and that God will call on those possibilities for growth and spiritual formation. So it's interesting because I am a human with all my human faults, feelings, and sinfulness. It is my desire that God will nonetheless take me just as I am. And then we have from Jesus, as he points out, everything I can do, you can do, and more. And then there's Genesis 3:19, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. So these are just some of the passages. And what is not at all fascinating is noticing how people who are using the passages continue to use this demon, the demonic, the envy, the evil, the jealous, in ways that are actually allowing two groups to be out there or more, while I have only two groups of people in the absence of dressing them up. And it's either you are a person who has emotional maturity or you are being ruled by your 14-month-old and you're a kid who needs a therapist even if you're grown up. So the ones who are playing at being channelers and downloaders, the 4D collective, I noticed something was off a long time ago. The cloak people, I had already noticed this when I was 20. As I'm like, they're hurting children. God, there's no monster to be found. So today, as a 45-year-old woman, I will tell you, I am of faith, and I cannot believe the bejesus of me that they're still coming up with bullshit ways to explain to human beings who are older than I am why bad JoJo will be let in and bad juju, and someone who thinks they're smart believes them. That's a person who needs a therapist, not me. So when you're not grounded in reality because you don't understand that any of your cherishable beliefs can be falsifiable, I'm not going to be shaming a person like that because they already were shamed. I'm not going to be arguing with them either. I have no argumentation because I'm in the presence of a buffoon. I have nothing to say to people who lack actual faith, because if they had any faith, they would remember passages like these and say, oh, God's perfect in every way, shape, or form. So enlightened ones that come with God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, know who the weak ones are. They're the ones who have self-righteous, contemptuous batons. They're the very same ones who, if you say you need to love yourself first, they will be confused. Thank you, Patrick Tehan. And they will also think of it as a shaming letdown because they need a therapist, not because to love yourself first is confusing. So insecure human beings, they think humans are selfish. Yeah, if I plug your fucking nose, you better bet you're going to be selfish because you're going to run the fuck away from me. In the meantime, neuroscientists, neurobiologists, and all the smart scientists everywhere out there have proven that which Jesus, God, Holy Spirit informed me with good Christian Catholic upbringing, that Maria also knew how to follow on her own as I got older, and that today I get to tell you all, I know what people do when they take things out of context, and I also know what I care two shits. And I also know I curse a lot more that I'm a grown-up. And am I still pissed at the little 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old cowards? Am I pissed? No. Do I still have trauma charges? No. Do I have irritation? Oh, yeah. But wait, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Where are you, Sadhguru? Because, I am a healthy perfectionist after all. So I guess, I just forget. No, nobody is going to be like me. And I'm perfect? No, I'm not. I'm flawed. Just like the sentence says, I'm actually human who has faults, failings, and oh, look, polyamory. I'm not a whore, though. So when you're grown up and you have self-acceptance, you can call me crooked all day long. The words mean nothing. Because words used to mean something as I was growing up. Then I saw the grown-ups who didn't use words in any way, shape, or form with integrity. They just use them based on how they want to wield what they like and don't like, which is a hypocrite. And then another one, and another one, and another one. So what I do with weak people is nothing because they're weak from their heart. I'm weak from my hands and my body. Not to mention I wouldn't use my hands or my body. But my point is that I would not be doing anything to get somebody in their feels, because by the time I was 20, I was like, hey, God, so cowards, I don't know what to do with them. Oh, no, I didn't say that. I said, I know what to do with them. It's called forgive. Jesus taught me. A heart that is able to recognize in another the same heart. So emotionally immature people, they want love, not work. And I don't pat people on the back, nor do any of those who are functional child adults. And in the meantime, those who want to tell me that it's hard, I'm going to say Kylie's doing it and she's a narcissist. There's also a psychopath who's doing it, and she's a psychopath. There's also borderline personality disorder who's doing it, and then there's also others who are doing it. And then there's mechanics are against me, narcissists aren't healable, and that sounds like ridiculous. Hypocrite grown-up who actually still has a venomous tooth because of their upbringing, and they actually have more certificates than I'll ever have. So when you meet grown-ups who, as a child who got taught what manipulative grown-ups look like, manipulator, liar, there's all your pseudo-intellectuals all over here, pseudoscience too. I'm pseudoscience because I'm a mystic. Spiritual one, here's my smart human beings who are actual leaders. Come on over, let's have a good time. At IHP, we're not going to have the weak ones, because the weak ones are backstabbers, liars, and betrayers, because cowards don't amount to anything due to the fact that they suffer life. They amount to whatever the movies show you, which is really ridiculous, because going to college and seeing people think it's hot that they get to fraternities and sororities that have them do shit, or people who think that getting yelled at in their face is also hot because it's making them into a man, a woman, in a day, whatever you think. Sure it is. Keep allowing yourself to be treated like a little piece of shit. I'm going to be out of here right now, because the minute that you showed me you have some master that can make you into a better version of yourself, well, I think you don't know what you're gifted. And I'm not laughing because it's funny. It's very sad to know that trauma pursues continuing to follow the people that have the shame and the self-loathing and gut wrench, and then they follow other morons around who say things like this: if you look away, my confidence will be eroded. And you think, wow, you just spoke your Achilles heel on screen. Should I try? No, I'm not going to waste my time that way. So when I think of evil, Knievel, medieval, I will think of nothing more than the people who at this point I know are in what is an evil scale. And then they're all surrounded on by the therapist, and they're all near volcanoes. And I organized them by rank of the ones that I know could be saved easily. And it's all the poor ones who actually follow the morons. The morons are on the very top. And that's because, well, they just got a head start with the way of wielding their words. So Schopenhauer, he talks about it. You want to appeal to a large audience, you appeal to the masses. They all drag the same pain points around. So it's not something that you think, wow, they're charming. No. Hey, Michael Stone, I would say you could use a different word for those people that you called charming. They're only charming to the buffoons who didn't go and get themselves healed because they didn't notice that they don't love themselves first. The minute they started dating somebody who's treating them like shit, or doing drugs or alcohol, or basically becoming a Pinocchio on an island and not noticing that isn't wisdom or smarts, and that coming out with we're going to be a happy because that's how we live happily ever after. Sure. Yes, that's happy. Hey, I can't tell you anything because wisdom would say otherwise. Hippocrates, thank you. Wise men and wise women and wise they will know that health is actually one of the biggest and most richest of gifts. So when you get to college and you meet people who are fucking and miserable and doing drugs, and you say, don't talk to me about your drugs because I'll rat you out immediately. And they're also breaking the law, and you say, again, I'm a member of society. Get the fuck away from me. You don't think anymore about any of this stuff, which is why I'm presenting to you as a 45-year-old woman. God doesn't pick the weak ones to speak up for him. But there's plenty of ones who think they're speaking up really great. And they're there for the ones who won't make it over the hump because they've decided, like my facade friend, to stagnate with their attachment insecurities. Okay, so with that being said, it's not a special group, but Maria definitely knows what legacy she's leaving behind. It's called Inspiring Human Potential. I don't motivate you to be yourself. You motivate you. I say you can get out of bad habits. Neuroscientists prove it. Others will say the scientists are saying it's very likely that you will not be able with willpower to get out of bad habits. Not really. It's very likely that if you need Dr. Amy Pigan, then yes, because willpower means shit due to the fact that you don't own your body. But if you do own your body, and you own your mind, and you own your brain, and you own your emotions, well, then willpower will be great, because discipline is not hard for me. I might whine about it. Anybody? 5D Mystics Skeptic Nutritionist Diary. I'm gonna get an entry soon enough. I'm still following it. Yes, it's not hard. The first 3 days were the toughest out of all of it, and I'm continuing to notice the benefits. Well, I'm waiting, but I do notice the challenges. So I'm gonna complain to you a little bit about it, because everybody wants to complain about something. No, because people think that I must have something that makes me suffer in life, and so let me make up something. So We're going to have some stories from Maria's teenage years as we continue to move forth, because I'm a self-led human being, okay? And I'm also a piece of pure consciousness and pure energy. Purusha, that's Shiva. Prakriti, that's Shakti. I'm my own masculine, my own feminine. They're both empowered, and I like to give it to you Maria's way. Don't write down notes, because this isn't a class. It's called Perspectives and Opinions. And when somebody wants to own God, they don't. I'm very, 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 as a child, who's still a child, disappointed at all the grown-ups that I thought cared. To this day, if they're professional, if they're whatever the word, words don't mean anything to me. You know why? Because the people who like to use them the most are the same ones who are like my facade friend who said I'm a hypocrite because I say this and that are true, and I now know why, because I use left and right. He doesn't. He's a hypocrite because he can't keep his word. So I'm going to let you in. Fun fact, I'm going to bring in a bunch of different stories of all human beings, men and women, who don't know how to keep their word. Do you think I suffer it? No, because all you need is one experience of a coward to notice exactly what shame looks like. You think God's going to choose weak people to speak for him? So when you have signs proving there's no demon and you got people who want to keep on using it, that's a weak human being for a person who knows exactly who God is. Discerning, equanimous love. What do you think? He's a moron? Creatorship is an idiot? Because these are the words that come into my mind when I'm looking at them. I know God. He's chiming in because he's reminding me the brothers and sisters who don't make it over the hump, they need those people. Because they need the father figures and the mother figures they never had. And apparently they need to look at them and copy them and then continue to be buffoons as they continue with shame inside versus become invincible. Because the minute I look away and your confidence is eroded, you are not invincible. You are just, all I have to do is tick in the right spot, ding, and you are out. And that is actually what it's called. Mean. Do you know I've seen people in podcasts telling human beings how to get back at a narcissist? That doesn't make them better. That doesn't make any of them better. And when you see somebody say, narcissists are unhealable, look, my colleagues are against me, that doesn't make them better. That's another weak one. And another one, because they have a self-righteous trauma-charged baton, and instead of allowing themselves to sit with their group and complain together and or whatever, share about how horrible it was, they're actually making content to tell you how to get back at someone. A two brute, one tooth, another tooth. So when you see pettiness on a screen, it's Schopenhauer. Thank you so much, man. The quote is, if you want to appeal to a large audience, appeal to the masses. I'm appealing to the inspiring human potential masses, because we're all the masses. But some buffoons actually think that they are badass when they're being what is petty and envious and jealous and spiteful. And there's no monster. I'm not gonna use. There's no monster. The one of the biggest sweet revenge, quote unquote, is I already had said no monster God, 20 years of age, and I said cloak people hurting children. 25, I was busy with school. 30, busy. So whenever I began to get through all of those different things that none of you know all about, it wasn't, oh my God, I'm so anointed, God, what shall I ever do? Please, please, please. So this is where when people talk to me about being mystic and spiritual and they think they're anointed and special, I've looked at them and said, you do realize that we are all anointed and special, correct? We're all God's children, so we're all the same. No, but you know what I mean. No, I know what you mean, but you know we're all the same. Like, you're not, and actually, excuse me, you do remember we have God in our corner. Like, this means we actually have a step of that which is invincibility due to the fact that science comes to you with quantitative data analysis. So their hypotheses are all based on things they have to see. Blessed are those who believe without seeing. I don't need to see God. Teenage boyfriend, you only believe because you're afraid of death. No, I believe it in my bones. To this day, anybody, I don't actually know. I don't do anything because, see, an empowered feminine, all I need is one lesson to remember what I learned the first time around. I don't need another one. And in this case, whenever somebody like my facade friend with me yelling in his face how he didn't tell me he didn't believe in anything, it's because I don't just believe. I experience every day mystical, spiritual experiences. This is part of my journey. It's something I honor, and you disrespect it by actually not only talking over me, thinking it's fake. In more than just that, you're also wasting our time, because this is something that is, so when you actually own that which is your story, the sense of self and all of it, you don't appreciate people pretending to be participating. Because, see, pretending is what you're doing. The minute you don't believe in something, you're talking over me, and your left brain is consistently just, is it ever going to be over kind of deal, okay? And so that's the part of why, to me, it's not fascinating to meet pretenders. But thanks to my facade friend, I learned that all people do this if they are not actually, committed to themselves. So you can love yourself first easily when you don't have any of that, which is called shame. I'm a shame-free person. It's I do me, you do you. I don't owe you shit. You don't owe me shit. So how about you just straight out tell me instead of making it, something that I have to figure. I won't be figuring it out. So facade friend, thanks to him and then attachment trauma educators, I don't have to put up with people because I learned already as a kid how to handle insecurities. And that's because the teenagers. Then I learned from my facade friend how it doesn't matter. You can think that you're having the most amazing conversation. People who don't own their subconscious and conscious and they're not aligned. So emotionally immature people, they want pats on the back. They are self-serving in a very specific way. Anything they want, they will get. Anything you want, they don't give two shits. That's how it works. But at the end of the day, you don't give two shits either because I have no expectations. I'm not in the relationship because I need something from you. Actually, I don't need anything from you. You and I, if we're in any kind of relationship, is because we enjoy each other. Does it feel great that people who you love don't want to get to know you? Really, you get used to people wanting to think they know you. And then you get used to people wanting to tell you your own story. And I laugh because it's, believe me, it's just so hilarious. And then when they come to you, why doesn't anybody listen to me? Why doesn't it? And you're like, okay, wow. So it's just so hilarious when that's why weak. I mean, I'm weak physically. When it comes to mental and emotional, I never knew that because you're open-ended inquiry, you're forcing your body to grow strong and courageous. I'm just curious. Crying is not strong or courageous. The little girl who's being still in my mind's eye with her little, the juice box, they're offering her a juice box and she's crying. That little girl, she's strong, not me. And any of those human beings who are grown-ups, the reason I respect them is because it would be disrespectful to disrespect any of God's creations. Number one. I respect God. Number two, all is perfection. If they chose not to go to therapy, it's because they basically were not parented right. So that's how hard it is. And three, they became teenager assholes like every other teenager and started to watch shitty ass movies and do a lot of other shitty things. And then I get to go to college. And so again, when you meet people who are weak, they don't know forgiveness, they don't know compassion. If they're healing, they're just going to say that they find it bullshit that we want to forgive and compassion. And like, you do you and we'll do us. So 5D living is, go have fun with 3D, 4D suffering people because we are not suffering it since we know how to use our ventral vagal state and our brains. So when you can be emotionally intelligent, it's because you're mentally intelligent, which is why science is the bomb, meaning it's awesome. Every single bit of what they're proving is already something that the ancestors knew about. And then when they're disproving the things that they need to be disproven, nobody's a monster. Hello, again, God's perfect. Akash source is perfect. The people who think that they're embodying perfection, if they embodied any remotely significance, then they'd know how to forgive, equanimous, discerning, and be, hey, so let's talk about opinions. And there's a bunch of them out there, by the way. Even though sometimes I fuck it up with the words, I know that there are a bunch of them because I forget to mention the podcasts that I listen with the other spiritual people. And I am watching more of them, and then the beautiful scientist people. So when you bring it all in, God, as always, is perfect, and we get to keep moving forward. The 5D collective of mystic, spiritual, mindful know that it isn't a big light that's going to come and everyone is... So, I knew the timeline a long time ago, and I'll get to that in a minute. Let me start with some stories and continue with them. Okay, number one, the person you will be in 5 years depends largely on today, the books you read, the people you hang out with, the food you eat, the habits you create. You can easily get out of bad habits when you have the willpower because you're using your ventral vagal state. If, on the other hand, you need Dr. Amy Pegan, then that's where, with her, people get healed, they get better. Once they're ready to be their true self, they're going to want to continue to work with their health. So they're not going to allow themselves to sit back and have inner critic, outer critic, dopamine hits, maladaptive patterns of behavior, drinking, drugging, fucking. They're not going to want to keep all that. So anybody who is going to be serious about where they're headed in life is going to take seriously every second, 24 hours of their day. And those who instead get sloppy, there's a way to get sloppy and you're aware of it, and then you get to motivate yourself, or you don't care. And this is what we're going to talk about, because these are the stories that I'm trying to bring to you today about why weak ones are people who don't know how to love, They don't know how to be forgiving. They also don't know how to know, even if we're afraid, it doesn't really matter about dark matter, dark energy. Please don't implode. You know what I mean? So fear, healthy fear, means that you're grounded in reality. Then when you have 4D, 3D, they're making up stories about superheroes and supervillains, and they're not making it up from thin air. They have a bunch of books, then they have downloads and a lot more. As an intuitive, I realized that there is what I call a 5D body type, and then a 4D, and I'm going to say 3D body type. And this is not for you to write, don't write notes down, because it has nothing to do with notes. It has everything to do with the embodied brain. So when you got a person who doesn't have an integrated brain and they're in survival mode, their amygdala is alerted, and that's what's working. It's alert, alert, alert. They are in sympathetic, and they don't know regulation. They don't know how to self-regulate because they didn't get taught it, and a lot more. So we're going to leave alone. But you can box them all up. 3D, 4D, low frequency. They navigate beneath the neutrality belt, and they do not move above it because they don't want to be equanimous. And they think love means a select one human being, and it's hard to keep a relationship, or basically that it means whatever it is their box has decided. They think love means what they like and don't like. They actually continue to just use the left brain alone, make sense to themselves. I make sense to myself, but I'll know it, and then I'm not caring of what makes sense to Maria. I'm caring about what works and what doesn't work, which is why I did the 5D Skeptics Nutritionist Diary, because I don't think I need it. But so far, it's already proven to me that it's helped my bowel movements and my energetic levels and keeping my body warmer. So is it true that your gut is always right? No, because I got into the habit of not eating in specific ways with specific meals for a while now. So no, my gut isn't always right. What might be simply right, no, not might. This is the part of, if you want to be a kid about it, you can be a kid about it. If you want to be grounded in reality, discipline. Thanks, Hippocrates. So when there's somebody who's studying what they're studying, if they're good at what they do, there's a reason why you get it. And it's math. Science is math. Spirituality, for those of us of faith, it's not math. That's what makes it beautiful, because I would never want to be just science. I'm pseudoscience. I love science, but I love that I come from the faith. And that's why it's sad when I see people who don't know that God doesn't make mistakes, and they're continuing with ancient stories, which means they lost their way. But we're going to leave alone cognitive dissonance and structurally dissociated, ignorant people who want to keep living the past. Because while they give each other red and green passes, we are not giving passes. So I'm a teenager, my boyfriend and I, it's my first serious relationship. We're having it's an argument. The only argument I think that I ever really had that I was like, what the fuck? And thankfully, because of my twin, I'm broken free from effective realism. So my strong feelings and thoughts aren't truer than anybody else's. But my boyfriend is saying that I only believe in God because I'm afraid of death. In the meantime, I know that he doesn't believe in God because, like my good Christian Catholic catechist taught me, everyone who has shit hit the fan and shit go down blames God for it. And then there's the Lucifer that they still blame. Or basically they turn their back on God and say Lucifer won. And it's like, you really think a monster could win? There's no monster, by the way, excuse me. So when you find out that this monster that the books created is nowhere to be found, and at worst, you know who Lucifer is? It's a Gargamel. Here, Gargamel, go fetch. Fetch, dog. Because that's exactly what you end up finding out when you look at a scale of evil. They're all people who need help. And the charming ones, they're not charming to those who are not buffooned. They're only charming to the ones who think they know everything, which is why we leave alone those who are weak. Because you see, again, shame is weak. Like the lovely teenagers that I met. And anybody who's still pettiful as a grown-up. Because pettiful means that you still think people can backstab you like you're a little kid. And I think of betrayers and a troubrete, and I'm a grown woman. I don't think of it as, oh my God. I think, so are you talking about an immature Cusco? Because that's what it is. It's a Cusco. I see it all the time. That's it. That's what a person who doesn't own their sense of self is to a person who owns their sense of self. So you're not going to shame someone. Is it enough to be saluted? The person used decent. Am I not decent enough? They chose these words from their subconscious, and he's a stranger. This is a stranger that I gave the cold shoulder to because my men friends said that since I'm friendly, polyamory, and a woman, I must be giving the mixed signals. So I had to be a bitch. I don't like it, but I said, you know what? My men friends seem to be correct, so I'm going to have to do it. Women friends, they had one of two options for me, which was let him get away with it in the sense of become his friend or yell in his face. No, Smart human beings, they said sovereignty, sovereign compassion. I forget what words they use. I was like, yep, that's what it is. And Terry Wheeler will tell you it's just a functional adult. So people who know how to self-regulate and are healthy, we don't actually feel offended by somebody who comes, manipulates their words in the low frequency of their desperation, but wow, decency. So inside of me, I'm like, hee hee. I wasn't laughing at the person. I was like, shit, it's not about decency. And I was like, and he's like, you said hi to him and him and him. And this is, again, a man who's got a wife, got a kid. And you got another man who thinks he's going to live forever, apparently, without sleeping and drinking as much as he does, has a daughter, used to have someone. Okay, so when you grow up and you see all of this very, very uninteresting, insecure number of people, Gabor Mate, thank you so much. He says, not why the addiction, why the pain. I say, how do you think you're brilliant if you don't notice how to take care of yourself? Oh, but wait, that thing of loving yourself is a confusing, shaming letdown. Thank you, Patrick Tian. So when you spot the 3D, 4D, remember, they're continuing to say that modern day therapists are wrong, that they're trying to imprison them, and that apparently there is something wrong with being able to be forgiving, compassionate, and equanimous. So you'll know that they created a story because, as Stephen Porges points out, that's what happens when people get into their defense mode. They begin to talk shit, like a person will say, oh, look, wow, I'm so healthy. No, you're not, as we weren't even talking about you. Teenage boyfriend, he has a friend who killed himself. So he has a reason for why he thinks God is fake. And he's arguing with me, but not only arguing, he is making a fact out of his opinion. It's called effective realism. And I could tell because that's what happens when you are a person who is picking up on each other, which is what anyone who owns their sense of self, is self-regulating, is mindfully living as their self. So you and I, if I'm in a room with you, I'll pick you up. You'll pick me up if you are the owner of your own vehicle and your own self. If you're not, then you'll know, I'll know. Yeah, but we leave that to the side because I can't know you. What I can tell you is I pick up on cerebral activity. I pick up on people. I don't bother telling them that, of course. And that's where it's because we're all wearing our face on our sleeve, our heart on our face, excuse me. So you know how they usually say it's on your sleeve? Stephen Porges is like, nope, you're wearing it on your face. And when people actually doubt kindness and neutrality and they continue to test it and they continue to think something's hiding and lurking behind the scenes, that's a sign. It's a red flag. Don't 3D, 4Ds, they're going to stick to it. I got the timeline. I didn't think it was real. I accepted defeat a long time ago. They're going to stay with their unhealthy fear. They're going to continue to channel, download, and they're going to entertain us. They're going to keep each other busy as well. But in the meantime, the teenage boyfriend was the only argument I ever had about God because I'm like, I'm marrying this guy and he thinks he's right and he's not. And today I have the grown-up word, effective realism. So when people lack self-awareness, they lack to recognize. In fact, they say, I want it to be real, but it's about what is right, what feels right. And they actually break down, they rip apart human beings who connect with people based on emotions. It's a cynic. It's a cynic who doesn't recognize they're a cynic, yet they make a blanket statement and write books about enlightenment being not real, like a Zen master, because they don't know how to use their prefrontal cortex. So when you see people who suffer life, remember, they're suffering it because they don't know how to sit in open-ended inquiry with their thoughts and their feelings, hug themselves, self-regulate in their ventral vagal state. And that takes your practice, but that's only if you're a self that maintained wholeness. If you didn't maintain wholeness, that's why first therapy, because I saw a person look at me in the eyes as I'm telling them, look, there's no energy vampires or dark auras, there's blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I was like, okay, you told me you're working with a therapist, right? Cool. Once you're done, come back around, because then I know you'll own your sense of self. When you own your sense of self, what I just spoke from my words, from my mouth, you won't be confused because you know how to differentiate. And so you'll be able to know, oh, 2 seconds ago is good. Now walked into a room. It's not because emotions are contagious. It's that you're a nervous system. So am I. And that's why when you're around the low frequency people, personally, I got used to suffering people because as a teenager, I spotted them like today. Today, though, I'm a grown-up. So by the time I was 20, I had already noticed there's a bunch of cowards out there. Now I'm attachment trauma educated, and they continue to be the same drama kings and queens. They have a bell. They attract each other because they're playing out the unfinished business. So they're going to continue to do the best they can, which is why, as Sadhguru points out, love is to accept, respect, and let people be whoever they are. Love isn't let me tell you to be. So teenage boyfriend, that's why in our 4 years of relationship, I was happy. People who liked that the relationship was over didn't have to be over. but it was over and it did get over. And you better bet I don't want to fuck him. And people who think that exes will always want to fuck each other, no. People who think polyamory don't know love, again, no. You don't know, obviously, what love is. If you knew what love was, then you would know that it would be, I want your happiness. And if your happiness involves being unhealthy and full of shame, well, hey, there you go. You're not going to break free will. Love is all things. Love never judges. Love never obstructs free will. People who like to say that's actually mean are the same people who actively want to tell people what to do with their life. People who are grown-ups will know exactly what it means to say, I am not your mother, your father, any of you. You will decide for you because you have the free will and the capability to hear information, to learn it, to simulate it, and I can talk about it. And so when you recognize free will, it's because you recognize subjective experience. And scientists who don't believe we have it, thanks Robert Sapolsky and anybody else that is believing karma and everything's already set in stone, are the same ones who don't know how to be themselves because they don't own their brain. While Robert Sapolsky, I haven't read his book yet, but I'm sure it has a bunch of different qualitative analysis and hypotheses and some quantitative. That's why I love those who are sciences and the ones who are academics, because I love to read. Pseudo-intellectuals make me laugh in my butthole. I'm a pseudoscience because I know what sciences does. So when somebody doesn't take sciences seriously, I can't take you seriously because you don't know how it works to build good information. When people want to believe only what they like, well, there's another buffoon for you. Oh, sure, I like a bunch of different subject matters too. That don't make it truer than others. Do you not know how to be grounded in reality? There's a bunch of subject matters out there. Quantitative data analysis proves what works. So what works is that a person who has an embodied brain that is integrated, they're going to know how to navigate the self-regulating stuff. The ones who suffer life, they're going to be given the choices. The choices are you going to rise and forgive? And as Dr. Daniel Siegel points out, forgiveness is not about patting someone on the back. Forgiveness is when you process what is a charge from your heart, which is sadness and or anger and or fear, so gut, head, and you're able to sit with it. That's why our thoughts and our feelings, the inner growth mindset. With the neutrality, you explore both. It's not good or bad. Only children need to be taught good or bad. Grown-ups don't use it that way unless they're adaptive child part immature people. So anyone who needs to have only two sides to a coin, that is where there's not two sides. There's 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. However, there's also guidelines, but those guidelines are very, let me think of how to word that one. So I'm going to leave that one for another topic because right now I'm going to tell you some more stories. But usually the ones who are using comparisons in ways of wanting to equate something as good or bad and not being able to consistently continue exploring a topic, they have decided what they believe is right and then what they believe is wrong, and therefore they're not grounded in reality, with cherishable beliefs being able to be falsifiable. They're also not at ease with the fact that they may be wrong. Therefore, they're not at ease with an integrated brain in a prefrontal and enjoying the interaction. So like the boyfriend who said, you only believe because you're afraid of death, and he continues to believe this firmly. Did he become aware that the only reason he doesn't believe in God is because his friend killed himself and he was upset at God? No. No, he did not. That's the lack of self-awareness that all the cowards that I've ever met will always have. So let me get to another story. So my facade friend, he, for example, as we were not friends for 5 years, meaning I didn't talk to him for 5 years, because he lied to me after we had a very important conversation. He went behind my back, lied to me. Then I get to know that he lied to me, and then I get to see him basically do this thing that is what I'm going to bring into the mix. Adaptive child part people, they wear masks. So Cusco, have you seen The Emperor's New Groove? Okay, if you haven't, you can watch it. But any person who's not aligned with their subconscious conscious and basically a self agent and sovereign is going to basically skip and fall on their head because there's some attachment wound, something inside that they haven't welcomed themselves yet. Okay, so it's very clear perceptionally for those of us who are aware of it. And with the sciences, attachment trauma, I can tell you I don't go telling people you're an insecure person. I talk about it here because we're building a community of securely attached, non-traumatized people. And in fact, that's why it is your opportunity, as God reminds me, my opportunity too, to stay on the ground and remember humbly that I am a human and fallible and just as much as crooked as anybody else can be. What this means is I can hurt someone's feelings not on purpose. I won't physically touch anyone with not even one finger, unless they're physically threatening me, which hopefully never happens as I'm physically weak. But the point is, you actually will not be looking to harm another human being with your thoughts or your emotions. That doesn't mean you're going to succeed, because I'm subjective. So are you. And a functional adult will know that, which is why we won't take things personally when someone has a different opinion. But the ones who need pats on the back because they're non-differentiated and they want their teenage friends to all come together and say you're right, those are the ones who are going to have a issue with people like me. I don't have an issue with them, and I've learned how to leave it alone. You don't pick the weak sides. They're all weak, not just some. You don't pick the right side. They're really the right, I don't know about that. You don't, so they don't like that it's open-ended because they have one small portion, and that's how limited consciousness people work, which is why God is good. He gives his children not more than what they can bear, and if they don't have the capacity to rise above and become their highest timeline, they have lower timelines to go hang out with. And it isn't a timeline. It's basically people who have self-righteous, contemptuous batons. They don't heal their trauma charges. They don't become their grown-ups. And like my facade friend, they stagnate inside their bodies, because as you get older, if you don't learn how to use your stress, the good stress, you're not learning how to use your embodied brain like a top performer. You don't know how to do mastery of your emotions, let alone management. You don't know how to harness your nervous system. And as Dr. Amy Apigan points out, it's not willpower or motivation. As your first 3 years of life, it's all implicit. So when people disregard that, they need to first learn how to undo what took place. And I don't like the word reprogram, because it makes it sound like you're a computer when you're not. You're not a computer, you're human. You're not reprogramming your poor 3-year-old. Your body and your nervous system protected you. So when people, they objectify, that's continuum of shame. When you objectify your human story, which is where I have an issue with the marketers who use these words to catch people and have them come use their apps, a person is not going to be reprogrammed. They're going to be transformed thanks to therapy, because they will reclaim that which was denied them. That was denied to them to feel loved and that they are whole. And so a person will be in a fetal position for a reason. Thank you, Patrick Tan, for being out there. So that's the part of why anyone who's betraying humanity is betraying themselves. That's why they're the weak ones, and they would not be in any way, shape, or form aware of God's timber, because that's the point. If you can't forgive, then you don't know God's timber. You only know books and stories, and you're using them to your volition the way you want to, which is why a man playing Russian roulette on screen is nothing more than a buffoon to a person who knows exactly what a true warrior would be like, and it ain't like that. Because if somebody does what they do because they care, which is where warriors are not some random group of people, I do know about the bad publicity. Oh, there's a lot of that. And so let me pause and think about that one. I love Robert Sapolsky for a couple of things. His book that I haven't read still makes valid points. But in his interview, he talks about a group of baboons that he looked at and studied. And he talked about what happens as selfish ones. And that's why a person who knows who God is doesn't need sweet revenge, because God always wins. This is the one reason why I always laugh when I see spiritual bypassers, because they continue to make out there to be a monster and a supervillain when there is none. So they continue to need to to deserve a seat at the table, like King Arthur. So they continue to lead themselves with a teenager attitude, with shame, which tells me how weak you are, because you're still looking to get a thumbs up from someone. The ones who have people bowing down to them are the very manipulative masters of themselves, but they all still hang around each other, because without each other, they're nothing more than the same immature kids they were when they were growing up, which is exactly why I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of people who don't amount to much because they're also not intellectually savvy. Had they been anywhere near intellectually savvy, then they would have gotten their asses to hear more of the smart scientists versus deny them and continue to read ancient books. So you read ancient books, you're living in the past. You're not modernized yet. You don't even know what they're talking about. You're basically becoming a dinosaur by the minute, which makes you not intellectually savvy, makes you intellectually ancient. I meet people like that. Gargamel come back in with the Smurfs. So you'll see Gargamel with the Smurfs, and they'll hang out and they'll have a good time, and you'll see Cusco and Pinocchio and Wendy, and they're all reading their books and their campfire. So like the flat earthers, they hang out and have a good time. There you go. 3D, 4D. So they're not doing anything wrong, because as long as they're following the laws, they're getting together. But that's why you have people asking, isn't a guru a cult leader? No. No. If you're confused about what a guru and a cult leader is, that's because you obviously don't know what a guru is and what a cult leader is. And then I think of the shitty docu-not series that you get to see in a bunch of places, which is why we have pop culture, because they don't give you the good information. They give it to you with a twist and with stories, and they continue to disregard a bunch of good material, attachment trauma, for some odd reason. I'm really not sure about this at this point. They have not updated any of that, which is the cult thing, but they also choose, this is the way that the left brainers choose to use words, because of there's really just and actually, you know what, now that I think about it, thank goodness I saw a couple people mentioning this. So this probably going to, in the next couple years, be brought forth by those of us who are living 5D, which is, okay, are you done? Are you done buffooning with your words, doing this shit that is really boring? Because we know what you're doing. We don't need that. Like, you know, so the only ones who find appealing the drama and the big little fists are the same people who don't trust any of humanity, the world. They're all like in corners with their likes and dislikes, and that's exactly why God is good, as he allows his children to have a place where they can call home, because they're going to definitely not feel good with us. Because we're like, okay, please stop. I mean, like, what you trying to say that it's only one way? It's not only one way. We have all these other ways, and we also know that there's no monsters in any person's body. Are you done? Can you leave alone our oversoul? Twin flames. Let's talk about that. Twin flames, soulmates, divine counterparts, and 4D. They continue to talk about the bright light is going to bring the. So, was Rome built in a day? Is a question I'm going to ask. There's not huge paradigm shifts. There's a series of small steps. It's like a snowball, you know, and at a certain point, the ones who can look to the past and notice, wow, it became a snowball, are the ones who have been following it day by in and day by out, here and now. The ones who, on the other hand, think that there's going to be, so I thought that there would be this light, because I remember when I was told of it, okay, I thought something was off, but obviously it was the beginning of me being able to notice, because there was a number of timeline dates. And so when this one moment hit, I laughed at myself. I broke free from the 4D bandwidth. I had watched a video of a lady who talked about it, and then I watched a video of decentralizing in the self and religious stuff with Patrick McNamara, and they both match. They mean the same thing. So what I'm trying to say is, you get broken free from magical thinking and hope, and I'm doing it this way because this is where I learned those words from lovely Patrick Tian, as he talks about the people who need therapy, and who, instead of going to therapy, they continue to hold on and build a relationship that doesn't exist with that which is, I'm gonna be able to be loved by my mother, my father. This is a figure of speech, okay? So people who are there, when I say teenagers, I'm talking about 16-year-old versions of people, because that's what they're living when they don't own their subconscious, the 0-8-year-old, because they didn't reparent themselves with a good therapist to then become their true self in their prefrontal. So the 5D body type, the way I'm going to say it, is a person who's using their prefrontal when they're channeling, downloading, all of it. They know how to self-regulate in their ventral vagal state. They don't suffer crying or a twin flame or a soulmate. They actually don't suffer life. They can get sad in life, and they can cry a lot, and they can get angry, but they do so with healthy self-soothing mechanisms. So we don't distance, we don't dehumanize, we don't demonize, we don't make some story up, we don't taint our stories. My story doesn't get tainted by Maria is a mystic. Maria is a mystic, but Maria meets people who are part of her oversoul and then knows that she picks up on the entire earth. Thank you, Tara Brock and Stephen Porges. As in one of the summits that I got to watch with them, they explained what I had already picked up on my own as I was picking up on our entire globe, because I got opened up to my oversoul and to the earth. Then I got to be opened up to the cosmos, and then to galactic beings, and then to more. Like, I had actually a download for us, for the community here. And I'll wait to share that in another episode if I remember. If I don't, remind me, any of you who are interested. But it was beautiful. And I look forward to when we all have our tears, that we all have some private lives for us, if that's a possibility for YouTube or TikTok or both. But so you move from teenager, I moved to the last serious relationship, or traditional I should say, was where I got told that they thought I would change, and I'm like, I told you specifically these words. I won't be changing. This is who I am. And so what you learn from, again, smart scientists, is that people who own their sense of self, we don't change because we own all our child parts, and we get to process those trauma charges. So that's a securely attached, non-traumatized person, because you self-regulate, you're sovereign, and it's very fun to be anchored always on and in ventral energy. And that's because you know how to be meditative within your body and your mind. And so with open-ended inquiry, you force your body, because resiliency with restored embodiment, the positive way, is because you're using the power of neuroplasticity. So thoughts, they all matter, and feelings, they all matter. The feelings, there's anger, sadness, fear, disgust, surprise, happiness. Then there's all those other mixture of feelings too. You are motivated to be yourself, and then you also have things that are, so for personality patterns, PDP framework of Dr. Danny Siegel, spot on. It works like a charm. When I did it, I'm like, yep, that's me. So you can learn how to play in your playground of thoughts and emotions, because you're working with your personality patterns, your temperament, and your securely attached person. So that 5D body type, again, whether mystic, spiritual, or mindful, we don't lose hope because we don't have magical thinking. And for a channeler and a downloader, we're opened up to all of it. You don't lose your place, which is why it's disappointing to meet the ones who say yoga brings demons out of you, that there's bad JoJo and Juju and Reiki. But again, if there are people who remain stuck in only ignorant TV shows and all that other crap, then you're gonna have what you're gonna have. Doesn't matter, because when I've met people that don't understand or relate, I don't try to get their approval. In fact, I laugh. I have people, one in particular, who's afraid of me because I don't judge. Love never obstructs free will. Also, God gives free will. So those who want to talk to me about God and then they want to go around telling what others should do, now, as a teenager, I would do that too. Someone said, you don't listen to what we do when we say, and I said, you're right. I'm such a hypocrite. Thanks for pointing that out. I'm never going to do it again. And I never did, because they were right. I don't listen to you, and I won't. To this day, I will only listen to who I say I will listen to. And as a person who knows that there's good and bad professionals out there, that's why I will wait to notice. As for people, it will either be a brave one who is actually their self, or it'll be a weak one who will not be their self. And like my facade friend, I won't be yelling at them in their face or stopping to talk to them, because, emotionally immature people, they just want a hug. I won't pat them on the back, but I can give them a hug, and then I can leave it alone, because that's the part of free will. So empowered feminines will be very, very much upset. Let's get to twin flames and soulmates as part of our ending story. When you know your oversoul, you'll know who they all are. Doesn't matter if you have 3, 1, 12, because I know some people have a lot more. It doesn't matter if you use soulmates, where it doesn't matter. If you have intuition and you pick up on your oversoul, you will like that. The difference is the 5D person will not be getting lost in a story, because it's a human we're talking about. Now, the part about what they did with the twin flame, I knew when it came about what was our theme. And so I'm going to leave that one to the side. But as I was moving into realizing that this story that they kept on talking about, and these specific, what are they called, like stages and all of that, I was more and more infuriated by the minute, as experiencing that which is a connection that goes beyond what words can describe, experiencing that which are downloads of all of these things. I can actually now talk about, it was hilarious, the level and the capacity to pick up on your twin flames as if you were experiencing exactly what they were experiencing. I mean, there are no words to describe that, but you don't get lost. So the part about actually, what can I say? I have a friend of mine. They decided, because they weren't able to patch things up the way they wanted to go and have another relationship. And in this moment, as they're doing what they're doing, I said, look, I think you don't understand, this is not the way. You want to first heal, you want to process what's taking place, you want to be able to be okay with it, you want to be able to love that other, even in the absence of coming back together, because otherwise you won't have taken the opportunity to use what is your connection, because that counterpart is here to allow other to become whole. Okay, so counterparts support each other to become their maximum potential, which is where God is perfect once again. So he knows every one of his children has goodness within themselves, but you choose. And here's why I still will bring in determined, Robert's post, because it's not your fault if you got shamed. So choosing is not as straightforward as it may seem, which is why anybody who wants to say that there's good and evil in a way of making it black and white, they're trying to judge those brothers and sisters who got the short end of the stick, which is where a person who says there's laws, so your opinion, I don't need it. You want to be able to define a group of people based on the words that you've chosen you like and don't like. You see what I'm saying? So people who are very big with the words and don't understand the subtleties of every one of 8 billion people and growing are the same ones who want to keep their little boxes in the absence of noticing that we're all made from the same box. It's an embodied brain, number one. So determine is writing how. You got a basic, and if you, in your basis is those first 3 years of life. And so when you see the lack of emotionally mature people out there, they're visible to anybody who has emotional maturity, because they also lack the intellect. They lack the smarts to notice that they're not being their self, like my facade friend, and that they're hypocrites, and that they actually just like what they like as right, and then they don't like what they don't like as wrong. And so they're lacking complete objectivity of their own self, and that's why they lack self-reflection, awareness, and the capacity to be honest and authentic, because they're not being it with themselves. So that means you can't look yourself in the mirror. If I can look at myself in the mirror, it's because I can know that you might point that finger, and when you do, I'll know why you did, and I might have misspoken, and therefore I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to, but that's not because I'm wrong or right. And when somebody wants there to be a wrong or right, there's another teenager for you, because they're again not understanding how subjective is interactions, and as for objective, there's science for objective. That's it. And it's a handful, and it has no adjectives, and it's very dry and boring. So when someone's bringing qualitative and all their little colors, and they're wanting to then bring in objective where there is none, okay, so you're going to have those who are clearer, and that's why we don't engage in conversations like with the teenage boyfriend, the only one that I argued with. And that's why with my facade friend, I thank him, because he showed me what people who are insecure and immature do, and thanks to the therapist, I also know. So someone who doesn't want to get over their shame, who doesn't want to become truly confident, they will always have what is a half safe. It's not half safe. They're just not going to be Pacha. They're going to be Cusco for the rest of their life. So low self-esteem, indirect communication, passive aggressive, and there you go. So it's not good or bad. It's a Cusco who's going to be able to be hanging out with Pacha. That's why we use new stories. And the twin flame thing, what I was trying to get to with the other story is that when someone decides that they are special and anointed and and then they don't notice that they can't get over someone that they love, meaning love them how they are, and you're not controlled by them. Obviously, you don't know how to wield your superpowers, which is where the lack of integration, and that's why that too requires someone who can help, like Terriel, because a connection doesn't send you head over heels in a way of you losing that integrity you have. And so integrity is where, to me, it means that I can commit. I can consistently be authentic. I can consistently tell you what I think. I can consistently respect your choices, and then I'll consistently love you just the same. And then I can also be aware if we have disconnect. And if we have disconnect, I can also recalibrate those relationships in an effort to continue to engage, even if it is in very small ways, because that's where, as you grow up, right? So when you're a kid, you had certain interests, and you grow up. That's why I'm 45.0 version. I'm going to be 46.0 version. So when you're expanding and growing together, consciousness people will continue to have a good time, emotionally and intellectually. When, on the other hand, you got 3D, 4D, well, okay, so here's the deal. The first time I realized a disconnect, I was just as lost as can be. I was like, this doesn't, hold on, let me get some water, because I'm going to be with you guys for a little bit longer. But I was just, you know what, I wanted to fall off my chair is what I wanted to do. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe what was happening, and I found it so odd. The lovely sciences, so the human elements are all the humanities, social sciences, mental health, neuroscience, quantum physics, put it all in there. Spiritual and spiritualities from my subjective experience and books that I will have read, Sadhguru that I get words from. Okay, so I just bring in that lovely melting pot here. But I was dumbfound, I think is the right word, because this didn't make sense. I couldn't understand how, after, it's like, if I've known you my entire life, how does a disconnect happen? The lovely attachment trauma educators are the ones who help me understand what happens with the dark sides of neuroplasticity. So shame, blame, fault, revenge is what people stay locked in and loaded. Self-righteous, contemptuous batons. They got a story for themselves, and they're going to continue just to wield that left brain alone, and that's where they're going to get armored shut in. I perceive the person completely from 1 moment to 3 years after armored shut in. Very sad. They can still heal if they went to therapy. In other occasions, it's complete, like you're a little pawn in their game. And it doesn't matter me knowing what the game is or not. You just realize that it's a little play on, like a checkers board, because it's completely disconnected from the person you are. And so it's like, it's like talking to a ghost, but they're not a ghost. It's a person. And then I remember my friend, well, he's not my friend, although he's kind of become that thanks to my other friend. So this illiterate who, thank goodness, he hasn't shown up anymore. He's the friend of the poet, the guy who's decent enough to be saluted. Their other friend is the most decent one out of the three, the most normal one, who accepted that I didn't want to become friends and didn't make it into a big deal. They're almost like the Three Stooges. But the illiterate, this guy, I saw the same interaction with him and Big Man Baby Child, that's a friend of mine, as they're having this conversation, but illiterate thinks Big Man Baby Child is actually serious. And I can tell, because he was about to leave to go smoke a cigarette, and he's like, I can't go now, and he's all serious. And I'm like, look, whatever he said, he was probably joking. You can, get up and go. Okay, so this is where I've noticed at this point that there are people who won't be expanding. And so once they are stagnating in a specific frequency with a specific story for themselves, you will find that those who suffer life will want to hang out with those people, and they'll look at them like superheroes. Remember, we have shamans for the 3D, 4D. We have people who are their Peter Pans and Lost Boys and Wendy's. And so what you can just understand is that emotionally immature people, they don't want to do the work. They just want the love. They started off with the short end of the stick. It's not an excuse. They simply will have had choices. If they don't make the choice to get themselves online, then they will become that which is their, I call it the 0-8-year-old version of themselves with a teenager in the room. So you can understand that they're not really in a relationship because they care to get to know you. It's a secure connection because you're the safe haven, secure base of yourself. So you don't need reassurance, but they're going to be in the relationship because of the familiarity, because they're fine with the relationship. So for me, once I realized in certain instances being a pawn, I said, okay, we're going to now, because I had to take things into my hands and redirect and reorganize. That's called healthy boundaries, and reframe, and I did. And as a person who is ventral vagal state led, all I needed to do was say no. Again, last time, if you don't respect what I'm saying to you, I won't be interacting with any of communication. That's all it took. And that is how it works when you meet people who actually are not into the relationship for the reasons of wanting to actually build one from here. It's not bad, it's sad. Because these are people, so I'm 45.0 version, and all people that I've known, I will have spent a significant, even if short, but significant enough time to know their person, which is why I think it was in the other video I told you about, there's a friend of mine, he's a masculine, and he's a mystic too. And as we were having this conversation, he's like, what you're doing, Maria, is dangerous. And he believes in energy vampires and dark auras and evil in this way of monsters. And I said, what? Looking into your eyes and into people's eyes, there's nothing dangerous. And I said, attachment trauma explains why people are how they are and how they can get healed. So what you're saying doesn't make sense to me. And that's exactly where, when I read 4D material, I have realized that they don't know how to pick up on the subconscious the way that I can, because they're actually still not aligned with their own prefrontal. So they suffer life from their 0-3-year-old that is not owned by anyone, the codependent 0-8. So they need reassurance. That's why they have those very specific 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s, because in the absence of that, they feel very afraid into the unknown. So they have to have some type of remember into the unknown, when she's saying, Siren, don't call me, I don't want to get into trouble. That's the dopamine hit of an up and down and merry-go-round drama. That's a pseudo life. So that's when, and that isn't the person grounded in their body. That's a person who is yet to be completely and fully integrated. And so they're not regulating in their ventral vagal state. And therefore, their amygdala, alert, 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 when they're channeling and downloading, their body is under stress, is not in the ease state. And in fact, their window of tolerance has not been expanded to a window welcome. And when we are instead an integrated brain, we have a window welcome. Our brain is now conduit. Our left and right work together. Thank you, Dr. Daniel Siegel, for the explanation. And so when I'm downloading, I've never gotten offline. My panic attacks, never offline. I don't dissociate clinically. There's the regular dissociation, which is I'm driving down the highway and I think of my trip to Hawaii and I skip my exit, as Dr. Daniel Siegel shares as an example. Instead, when somebody is on and off, I will notice, because it'll feel like they're brain dead while they're there, or there's a little balloon around them and I'm like, did you hear me? And I had to get familiar with that. And then, thanks to my attachment trauma education, not mention anything, because I just know that there's no reason to, because they're usually people who are not choosing to go and get therapy because they don't need any of it. They're doing great as they're downloaders and their gut is right, and spiritual people are more right than science people, so this is the part of where spirituality and those who are in any way, shape, or form enlightened aren't competing with science and spirituality. They're both on the same team. So the only ones who have teams that are divisive with information are those who don't like that we're one big happy family. And that's because the left brain, it makes sense in very specific ways, but it's not working with the right. And so they don't have the ownership of the sense of self. And therefore they don't actually have what is the emotional depth and the mental depth and the capacity to not need what is instead a mask. Okay, so when people will have built an identity, that's why they get rigid and or chaotic if they're an adaptive child part and don't choose to become their functional inner child adult. That's why Terry Real calls it a losing strategy, because they're not in the interaction to actually have a conversation. They're in it to win it. And then you don't win or lose anything, but you better bet the ones who live out shame, they're blinded by their ego, which is also why the self-righteous contemptuous baton doesn't do any winning. They're protecting themselves. So they're going to just, the messy disaster, quote unquote, repeats, which is also why it's not called self-sabotage by Janina Fisher. It's called the person who is not ready to meet their 3-year-old. So when somebody is not ready to be free of their shame, the defectiveness that came with their birth because of their womb, the womb they were in, and then whatever happened, there's no monster to blame, because nobody's perfect. Not me, not you, no parent, no nothing. The scientist can help anybody who wants to become their true self to do so. If they don't want it, nobody's going to make them. You don't obstruct free will. Laws exist. Laws make people follow the laws. And that's why when it comes to people wanting societies back, I don't So another story, one of my most proudest moments, and this was when I found out I had left myself gifts behind. And I even laughed when I said, I'm so proud. I was like, proud of what? You did something that's your human makeup, Maria. There's nothing to be proud about. It's just yours. Okay, so my big, lovely moment was Rainbow Baby Child. I'm going to call him that. So Rainbow Baby Child and I were having a nice interaction, and all of a sudden, from smiling and laughing, we go to I'm getting yelled at in my face because I said something that they took it as rejection, but this is snap and done. So as they're actively yelling at me, I, in the meantime, had all this stuff come up because of the words that they spoke, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to let it out in that moment, and also it had nothing to do with him, but I was able to recalibrate. This is called self-regulating your nervous system, and while recalibrating, saying, well, we have a mistake going on, there's a misunderstanding, which I wasn't able to fix immediately, but I was able to over time fix. And so here's where, again, we are all angels sent to each other. Now, at the end of the day, does the interaction with people who are in shame help? The ones who have maladaptive patterns of behavior, inner critic, outer critic, drinking, drugging, fucking, they have free will. And this is the part. Securely attached, non-traumatized people, men, women, they won't be wasting their time trying to tell people who are lacking secure attached and emotions to do anything, because the very point is fear. Definitely I have healthy fear, but when people have unhealthy fear because they got shamed and they got defective because they didn't go heal themselves, and then they want to treat their bodies and treat their life like teenagers do, which, I mean, again, teenager to me was normal. Now I'm like, okay, teenagers are mature, grown-ups need to be better, and I'm leaving functional child adults are grown-ups. So anything that's within a exaggerated the watching your fucking back, demons, Lucifers, devils, anything that is wanting to continue its stories versus, look, if you have a person who knows how to be good, it's because they have functional child adults, compassion, forgiveness. That's a strong one. If they have weakness because they're an asshole, I can be an asshole too. The difference is they're an actual asshole, like my facade friend, because they're insecure. They think they know everything, and they're going to go hang out with the ones who do, and they can do so because we don't want to hang out with Gargamel and Smurfs. If they come our way, they'll soon very quickly notice how we all will inquire, say, excuse me, come again? Did you just say that that's a bad team? I mean, yes, good manners. We obviously want to teach good manners. We don't need to be humiliating or shaming someone. We can be actually speaking, explaining, and here's a perfect example. So with my friend, by the way, the big, lovely rainbow child, I got to stand up in a very specific moment of time where, yes, they're imperfect completely. So am I, though. And being treated like a little piece of shit, that's not nice. So when you meet Diego's family and you know that they're shit, the way they're behaving, you don't say, let me put myself to the side and continue to allow you. No, you say, excuse me, I basically was very much firmly making others aware I like him as a human being, and wow, you really crapping on him big time. Like, there's no need for this exaggeration, and that's how you leave it, because people who think that by ganging up on another person that they're doing the right thing, no, what the right thing is for people who want to say they love each other are interventions, having them, if you can, go to therapy, and even then, you still will notice that those who want to live out the rest of their life with shame in a low frequency will do so. I've seen it done. Because shame will hide away itself. So the part about why anyone who knows, again, that you're not God or divinity or it, and that people will either choose their highest timeline or they won't. And when they don't, like my facade friend, they'll choose another. There's other soul age groups. There's the Enlightenment soul age group, and then there's other soul age groups. That's how I've made sense of a lot of things from the spiritual perspective, besides the part of lifetimes, but the lifetimes don't even matter as much because you don't need to think of your past lifetimes. If you look at your life from now, you can successfully achieve your highest timeline if you move towards love, compassion, and towards understanding that everyone is imperfect and flawed. So while it may sound like I don't welcome all, I welcome all, but you better bet if you're going to bring me your unhealthy boundaries, I'm going to say, excuse me. And if you're going to think that I'm not going to pat you on the back. And if you get, so when you think, I don't think in terms of right or wrong. I think of I'm a person, you're a person. Subjective realities, a lot of opinions, a lot of topics. Then we got our objectives over here. It's a very straightforward equation. As for the big world, yeah, we all wanted to. Let's make it a better place for me and for you and the entire human race. The ones of us who are serious about it, we're doing it. The ones who are just talking about it, they're doing it with their lists, and they present you their list, and you're like, haha, I see you have a nice list there. So while you have your lists over there and pretend to negotiate, we're going to go over here and we actually bring our list together, and we continue because God's got everything taken care of. So does cosmic karmic balancing when that takes place. Okay, so that is where you will know why we be and do all in one go. That's why I made fun of Buddha. He sat under a tree. I'm like, come on, Buddha. Now I know there's a future Buddha coming. I can't wait to meet him, or her, or they. And as for people who want to live their fake self, they're just going to continue to, pretend to do what they do. And, well, they probably won't be near us too much because ventral energy is off-putting, since their actual body says, oh, I want in. But their left brain says, that's fake. Kindness isn't real. Neutrality, it means they're weak. You know what? They need to know they're the bad side because there is evil over here. I'm going to let them know what I think. You're confusing science and spirituality. So you get to have fun with people who like to interrupt all the time. Then you have fun with the ones who have fun with us. And so when I finally was able to look to the past and look at my entire oversoul, I said, you know what? Thanks God, you're awesome. And with the shame thing, if a person doesn't learn to love themselves first, that's their thing, not mine. So you can't make someone choose love because they have to choose it. Then they'll choose healthy fear, healthy disgust, healthy surprise, healthy happiness, healthy sadness, anger, and fear dimension. Yeah, they won't be a Zen master talks about laundry or it's a wellness industry. It's not true. And they have all the scribbly board. It's say we don't have a scribbly board like that. But then again, when I scribble, I actually activate two sides of my brain. And when I get angry, depends when I'm getting angry how that happens. But we're going to have some fun with our exercises. I can't wait to bring them. We're going to do it in group because my body has plenty of more stuff to tell me about anger. I can't wait. And if I forgot any stories, I'll bring you some more stories. But for now, I'm going to go. So thanks for stopping by. We will be back with more. Have a good one.